Hi, everyone. What a beautiful day. And that little video clip was just my homage to how beautiful it is outside today. And I got to give a shout out to the music was recorded by a friend of mine, John Hilliard, and it's called Summertime Drive. And I thought it just goes so beautiful with today, which is really like a summer-like day today. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Um, yeah, thanks for taking some time out of this beautiful day to be with us for our community check-in. We're back after a break last week. I took some study leave, attended a virtual conference. By Friday afternoon, I did not want to see another screen for a long time. But it's good to be back, and it's good to be here for the check-in. A chance for us to say hi. Please post your greetings in the comments section, say hi to each other, tell us all how you're doing, what you got planned for today, this beautiful day, maybe some work in the garden or a nice walk outside somewhere. So my guest today is a familiar face to a lot of you from St. Mark's, and probably familiar face to most Anglicans in the Diocese of Eastern Newfoundland and Labrador. And probably even beyond that, Kevin is familiar to a lot of people. Kevin Smith. Kevin is the planned giving consultant for the Diocese of Eastern Newfoundland and Labrador. But more importantly, he's a parishioner of St. Mark's, part of our St. Mark's family. And we're so glad that he's taken some time here today. And we're going to talk about something that a lot of people, especially Anglicans, don't like to talk about. We're going to talk about money. And also, in particular, planned giving, which is another thing that people don't really like to talk about, which is their own mortality, the truth that we're going to die at some point, and that, we need, I think, now is an important time to have some of those conversations about, what we're going to leave behind, the legacy we're going to leave, and how we can help, our church community and our, neighborhoods, and by leaving, something behind that will help other people. So we're going to have that conversation today. So that's your out. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you want to go sit on the deck somewhere with a cup of tea, but we're going to have a good conversation today. So Kevin, thank you so much for being here to talk to me and to the people who are watching live and the people who are going to tune in later on.
Thank you for having me, and I trust that you and your family are coping well during this crisis.
Boy, we're doing all right. We're trying.
Yeah.
Like everybody, it's been a long, long haul, and I know, yeah, it's tough. It's tough on everybody.
Yeah.
Tough on everybody. So let's get the ball rolling, Kevin. So my first question to you is, maybe you could give us a little bit of background about yourself, how you got involved in planned giving, and maybe even a little bit about how you came to be involved here at St. Mark's.
Well, my family moved down the East End on or about the same time that St. Mark's was starting up. In fact, I don't think we made the first service down at the old Virginia Park Auditorium, but we certainly made the second or third service. And so that's a long time ago, and we've been members of St. Mark's ever since. Member of vestry for a period of time. I was a member of the Stewardship Committee for a number of years, and other committees that you got me involved with over the last number of years. But I worked for the university for a good while, and I was involved in fundraising. There are all kinds of fundraising. Annual, major, and then on or about, I don't know, 30 years ago, I guess, planned giving started to come into Canada as an outreach for charities, and we kind of latched onto it and introduced it to the university. And when I was about to leave the university, I got approached by somebody employed by the National Church in Toronto asking me if I would take on the task of plan giving for Newfoundland and Labrador. So I said yes. And so for a number of years, I was employed by the National Church to do plan giving ministry in this province. We found, though, that trying to do the whole province in Labrador was just a little much for one person. So then we restricted it to the Diocese of Eastern Newfoundland and Labrador. So about 2 or 3 years ago, my contract with the National Church concluded, and Bishop Jeff asked me to stay on and work for Anglican East NL in the plan giving area. And I've had a lot of very great experiences with parishioners of St. Mark's and other parishes in this province over the last, I don't know, 30 years or more. And I've seen some wonderful growth in terms of the realization that plan giving is a vital ministry in any parish. And if we don't do something to encourage our faithful to consider a planned gift for their church, then we're leaving money on the table. And worse still, if we don't invite our faithful to contribute a planned gift to their church, somebody else is doing it instead. And you can bet your bottom dollar on that. There are some 86,000 charities in this country, and a lot of them are knocking on doors. So, plan giving is a very important ministry.
Definitely. And I like the point that you raised there about the number of charities. I mean, that's one of the big changes in probably the last generation in terms of how the church, collects its givings. We're not the only game in town anymore, right? There's lots of options for people who want to give. So in some ways, we really got to step up our game in terms of how we, talk about these things. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted you to be here to talk with us today. So Kevin, in a nutshell, as simply as you can, what is planned giving? And because I know there's some people who are probably tuning into this and they're thinking, oh, planned giving, that's just for old people. So what is planned giving, and who really needs to be thinking about planned giving?
Well, I suppose our Sunday envelope is a kind of planned gift, because after all, we do plan on giving X number of dollars on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Oops, I'm lost. And but normally, when we think of planned giving in the church, we think about gifts that are larger. Usually, they come from accumulated resources, as opposed to your income right now. And it often has significant tax consequences, and sometimes involves what we call allied professionals, such as lawyers and accountants and insurance brokers. So in short, the definition planned giving is a way of making a donation to your church with careful thought and planning, so as to maximize the benefit of the gift to the church and to make the most of the tax benefits. So that's basically the definition of planned giving.
So can you say a bit more about what are the different types of planned giving, like options that people could consider if they were interested in some kind of gift like this?
Well, the most common form of planned gift, in fact, 75% of the planned gifts that I've seen over the last number of years is a bequest in the will. And the tax benefit accrues to the donor's estate after he or she has passed, mind you, but still, it's very, very important. So because there are many people out there in church land who don't have wills. And it becomes important for us to encourage our faithful to get a will, to get a legally drafted will, and we prayerfully request that they leave a bequest in that will for the church. That would be the most common. There are other forms. For example, the very first planned gift that I witnessed in 2000 when I joined the church was a life insurance policy. A lady down in Portugal Cove had a life insurance policy for her parish. And there are various forms. I won't go into any detail right now, but it can benefit the donor and the parish immensely. A gift that we've seen some action on in recent years, especially at St. Mark's, is a gift of securities. People who have stocks and bonds and want to make that as their gift. And if they make the stocks and shares directly to the church, there is a significant tax consequence for them. However, if they were to say sell those shares and give the money to the church, they would have to pay capital gains. So, you know, donating your stocks and shares is a good thing. We also have gifts of property, and we've seen that not necessarily at St. Mark's, but we've seen it in other parishes where the donor makes a contribution of land to the church sells the land, and then gives the donor a tax receipt for the value of that property. And there was one large one there in the last year or so, and the parish benefited immensely, you know. And there's one other one that I just want to mention at this point. It's called a gift plus annuity. So that if someone makes a cash donation, a portion of it will be used as a direct gift to the church right now. And another portion of the gift is used to buy a commercial annuity from an insurance company. This annuity then provides a life income to the donor. Okay, so he or she will benefit from the tax receipt from the church and from the life income. And normally, because of age, these return on income are tax-free. So it's really a good thing.
Can you say a little bit about how this idea of planned giving ties in with another idea that I know you're really passionate about and have done a lot of work on here at St. Mark's, but also at the diocesan level, and that's the idea of stewardship. How does planned giving tie in with stewardship, which again is one of those words that sends Anglicans running to the door? Stewardship.
It's the S word.
The S word, yeah.
Well, you know, planned giving is all about stewardship. It's all about stewardship and being good stewards. And when we talk about being a good steward, I mean, we're stewards of everything from creation, the gospel, our extended family, other human beings, the poor, our property, our church buildings, our work, and ourselves. So that includes our time, our talent, and our treasure. So stewardship is really a way of life. I always say stewardship requires a giant leap of faith to see what it's all about. Because it's a way of life, and it's a way of understanding our lives and our relationship with God. In other words, the old definition of stewardship, what we do with all that we have after I say, I believe. After I say, I believe. And, you know, planned giving may be the purest measure of whether or not we're having success in teaching Christian stewardship. I have found that it's a tragic judgment upon much of our work when thousands of people each year live their lives as Christians, and die making no provision for a gift for their church. That's kind of sad. And I've seen that happen as well.
I think too, there's a level of or a connection with gratitude, right? And at least in my own personal life, the acknowledgement that the things that I have, you know, whether it be my health, my family, my career, even the material things that surround me, I didn't get them just on my own, right? They're gifts from God, first and foremost, but without a network of people and relationships and a community, I wouldn't have anything really, right? We're not islands unto our own selves, right? We are connected, and you know, whatever we do, whoever we are, wherever we got where we are through God's grace and through the help of those people around us. And so in some sense, you know, stewardship and planned giving, like we're talking about, is an opportunity to say thank you and to give back to that community that helped to form and shape us, right? And in some ways, you're giving back to God what God has given to us.
That's why I say it takes a giant leap of faith to really understand and appreciate what you just said, you know, because most people figure, well, you know, I have what I have because of my own efforts, and you know, what does God have to do with that? Well, you know, we are stewards of everything that we have around us, and you're right. We're just giving back to God what He owns in the first place.
Yeah, your breath, your strength, your intellect, your work ethic, everything comes from God or from someone who taught you, showed you, encouraged you, nurtured you, right? And for Christians, a big part of that is the church. And I think planned giving is just like you're saying, it's a form of stewardship. It's giving back to the God and to the community and to the people who have helped you become what you are. Right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important for the church right now, probably more so than ever, because I don't want to get into all the talk of, you know, decline and all those things, because we all know all that stuff anyways. We don't need to dwell on it a whole lot. But, you know, as the church continues to shift and change, and, you know, people's idea of belonging to the church is changing. People's idea of, you know, how and what they give to the church is changing. And I would say increasingly, you know, younger people, younger families have less disposable income to give to any charitable organization if they were, you know, in the mind frame to do so. So I think, you know, taking all those things into consideration, planned giving becomes even more important, right? As we try to plan for the future, as we try to anticipate what, not even what the church is going to look like, but what society is going to look like, and then what, you know, is going to be required of the church in order to continue in its ministry in whatever way, shape, or form that is. Planned giving, having something in place, you know, resources, financial resources that parish communities, faith communities can draw on into the future. So as everything else seems to be really unstable and uncertain, at least we have the stability and the certainty that comes with, you know, the resources that are handed on to us from, you know, the previous generation, right? Mm-hmm. They become even more important, I think, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
They show the, you know, they're kind of a light or a you know, footing that we can count on as we move forward.
Mm. Well, you know, St. Mark's has been very good in terms of reaching out and trying new things to help support the ministry of the church over the last number of years. I remember when Reverend Tom Moulton was here, and we introduced direct debit. St. Mark's was a bit of a pioneer in that. You know, a lot of people said, well, they claim, you know, 1% or 2% or 3%, whatever it is, it takes away from the donation to the church. But that's the cost of doing business these days, you know. And I'm not sure what percentage of our congregation right now is contributing through direct debit or Visa, MasterCard. Maybe you could tell us on that. But you know, this is I remember when we did that, the very first summer we did direct debit, St. Mark's didn't have to borrow a loan in the summer to get through the summer. Mm-hmm. That was because of people giving through direct debit and Visa, MasterCard. That was really a tremendous asset to the church. And I suspect the number of people who are contributing that way has grown, you know. Online giving is another thing that you've been kind of promoting, which reminds me, by the way, I didn't realize that we can do e-transfers from our bank account to St. Mark's until this week. I saw it in your email. But, you know, online giving is fast becoming a very much in vogue method of supporting your church. In fact, a recent report I saw said in 2017, online giving in Canada contributed something like $144 million. That's a lot of money just through online giving. And the question is, of course, what do we have to do to encourage more people to do that, either from their iPhones or their tablets or whatever? What do we have to do to encourage that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about electronic giving, because that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about. And I mean, electronic giving is a type of planned giving too, isn't it?
Oh, it is indeed.
Yeah. So you were mentioning the percentage of people here at St. Mark's that give electronically. It's somewhere around 55% mm-hmm. of our givers give electronically, which is, and especially in the current situation that we find ourselves, that's really been a godsend for us. And, you know, my hat's off to, you know, Father Tom Moulton back in the late 90s, right? In the late mm-hmm. 1990s, yep. Started the process along with your help and the help of some other people at the time. He was really way ahead of his time, right? And I think now, you know, if I was a parish priest that was in the midst of this pandemic, you know, trying to navigate my way through social media and digital ministry and all that kind of stuff. And then at the same time, having to learn about and implement some of this electronic giving stuff, I mean, it would just be completely overwhelming. Right? So I don't know if you want to say a few words about, you know, what are the benefits? Because you did you know, a few of the benefits for the parish in terms of electronic giving. It gives us something that we can kind of budget around, and it's a stable income, especially in times of the year when people aren't in church, because predominantly Anglicans still only give to the church when they go to church, which is one of the reasons why we're struggling right now. Well, a lot of parishes are struggling because people aren't going to church, and so, you know, envelope giving is not being sustained. So what are the benefits of electronic giving for the giver?
Well, I used to say that electronic giving, whether it be direct debit or Visa, MasterCard or whatever, is sort of like a painless way of donating to your church. And it's a stable way of contributing to your church. For example, a lot of people take off for their cottages in the summer, you know, And if you don't go to church, you don't contribute unless you're giving through electronic giving. So this is kind of, it's very important for people to realize that the expenses of a parish do not stop simply because June arrives. And I'm sure you know that. And so, whether it's direct debit or Visa or email transfer, these things are very important. And there's another system called Canada Helps, which you have on the website for St. Mark's. You can go in there and make a contribution, and they will generate a receipt for you instantly. And then they will transfer the money to the parish. This works very, very well. And of course, the old-fashioned way of mailing in checks is very important as well.
It is, and I don't want to knock that. I don't want to knock that way of giving, because for some people that's still the way they give. But I know, because I've been doing a lot of reading and research on this over the years, but in particular since the pandemic. But a lot of researchers are saying, from within the church, to say, one of the few places where you can use money, and especially use checks, is the church, right? Because a lot of places don't have the infrastructure in place to accept anything beyond cash and checks. Right. And that's why I think right now is a good time. So if there's other, parish leaders, whether ordained or lay people watching this, now is a good time to be putting in place the infrastructure that your faith community, your parish community needs in order to modernize the way that you take money from people. There's no excuse now for a parish not to have a Canada Helps page where people can give that way, right? To have something set up so that people, and we got a lot of grief for it a couple of years ago, but to have, a point of sale terminal, right? So a debit machine.
I remember that.
In your office. I mean, there was a big hullabaloo, that we were passing this around in the church, and, and I had to do damage control and tell people, that's not what we're doing. But, somewhere, that people who come to church that probably don't carry cash, don't carry checks, and I would be one of them. I never have money anymore. So if you're asking me for money, if you can't take it electronically, either from my debit card, my credit card, or some kind of transfer, you're not going to get any money from me, right? Yeah. And most people are like that. And it's not just a young and old thing anymore, I don't think, right? I think things are changing so quickly that increasingly, older people who usually get, I think, stereotyped into, being behind the times when it comes to technology. And that is increasingly not the case, right? These, people, seniors are using, electronic means to do their financial transactions. I know they're on social media, on Facebook and different places. So they're engaged, they're plugged in. And so we not only need to be thinking about these things in terms of, the younger folks, but this is increasingly where everybody is.
Well, and this pandemic, of course, has pushed that even beyond the limits of what we would normally expect. I mean, the supermarkets, they don't want cash anymore. They don't want cash. They don't want check. They want debit, And a lot of stores, I was telling you earlier that I went down to pay the pharmacist this morning, and it was only $7 or $8. And so I said, do you mind if I pay in cash? And she said, no, I don't mind, because I have an alcohol bath here to put it in. So, I mean, she had no problem taking, but normally they don't want to take cash. I just want to go a little bit further. In my role as a planned giving consultant for the diocese, I go around and I speak to vestries, and I speak to parish groups and clergy. And there's, a bunch of things I say to them about planned giving. And I say to them, this is happening right now. This is happening in this province, in this country. And if you don't get on board, then you're missing out big time, you know? So I encourage parishes to come up with a vision for your organization. Why do you need money? Is it simply to keep a church open, building open? What good will more funds accomplish? Will they further God's work? You know, will they support ministry? And I've been saying that for 20 years since I've been involved with the church. And remember, you don't have to be rich. Don't have to be rich, and it's not only for people who are in their 70s and 80s. You know, it's important for young people as well.
Yeah, and I guess I can speak to the point that you're raising there, but you know, when it comes to St. Mark's, like, what's the case that we can make for people to consider planned giving? And it's pretty simple. If you want the ministry to continue that St. Mark's has become known for, because we have a really great reputation within the community of helping people, of partnering with other community groups, of doing creative things, whether it's in our building or online through social media. If you want that to continue, and if you want there to continue to be a progressive, open-minded, you know, welcoming expression of Anglicanism for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, well, then a planned gift is one way that you can ensure that that continues, right? And that the money, like you say, is not just to, you know, keep the lights on and, you know, to keep the roof on the place, but it's to make sure that this, even if you're thinking about just a building, that this can continue to be a space that people can use, that new Canadians can come here and, you know, and fellowship with each other. That, you know, the income tax group can come here and run a clinic and not have to worry about paying rent. You know, any number of events and gatherings that go on here that provide a service to the community. All of that stuff, a planned gift from you ensures that all of that stuff continues on, right? And I think that's really important. I know we're running out of time, and I wanted to make sure that people know you can ask questions if you want. We're kind of running out of time, but even if you ask questions now and we don't get to them, I'm sure myself and Kevin wouldn't mind going back down through the comments and stuff and answering anything that's there. And I'll make sure, you know, if people want to get in contact with Kevin to have further questions, we can make sure that that happens too. And someone just made a comment, Marlene Hardy. I don't know if you know who that is.
Well, I'm sure I do.
She says, love that point. Focusing on the good that your donation supports is compelling. I don't know if he's listening today, but another person who's been really helpful here at St. Mark's in terms of, you know, financial matters is Eric White. And Eric always says, you know, if you do good work as a church, people will want to support it and be part of it, right? And so the other thing is, you know, if someone's watching from another, you know, parish community, what are you doing that people can be proud of and they'll want to support, right? And if you can cast a vision for that, I think people will come alongside.
Well, Reverend Rob, you're stealing my next point.
Sorry.
Because I wanted to say that the research that I've encountered over the last number of years says people will support an organization that they see that their mission is good and that they are doing good things. And so I echo what Eric was saying. I know people, they don't give to the church, they give through the church to do God's work. And I always ask a parish this question: are you doing good work? Are you doing God's work? Is your work worthy of support? And most people would probably say yes. we're doing some good stuff. And especially at St. Mark's, we're doing a lot of good stuff, and it's worthy of support, for sure.
Yeah. Before we go, I know there's probably some people who are listening to us today, Kevin, and they're saying, you guys are nuts to be talking about money and planned giving in this particular time when there's so much uncertainty, you know, around public health, and so much uncertainty around the economy, and even so much uncertainty around the church itself. So what could you say about, you know, is this a good time to be considering planned giving?
There's never a better time than right now. When I first got into the business a number of years ago, they talked about this transfer of wealth. Well, that's happening right now. According to CIBC, there's this $1 trillion transfer of wealth is happening as we speak, and it's a good time for the church to be bringing their parishioners up to date in terms of the work that they're doing and the needs that they have, and make sure that they're out there in front. I'm sure everybody's heard me tell this story, but I had a lady in Gander one time, and she made a very generous donation to the cathedral there. And I said to her, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" She said, well, because the rector preached about the needs of the church or the ministry he was involved with, you know? And the second thing she said, I read your column in Anglican Life and learned from that. But the third thing she said, I'd rather give my money to God than the government. And I said, wow, that's a powerful one, you know? That's a powerful one. There's never a better time than right now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you hit on another point for us leaders, whether, you know, you're a priest, a deacon, or you serve on vestry or on a finance committee, is find ways to tell your story, right? Let people know what you're doing. Let people know what their money is doing, right? That they give to the church. And one of the great gifts that we have to do that now is social media, right? To be able to post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to tell the story, tell your people the stories of what their generosity is doing, not just in your building, but in your neighborhood, in your communities, wherever, you know, you're partnered with somebody. Tell your stories and tell them over and over again, right?
Sure.
Don't be afraid of repeating. I know there's this Anglican thing about, you know, not wanting to sound like you're gloating, right? But these are good stories that need to be told. They're part of the good news of what God is doing in the world and how we're partnering with God to get these good things done, right? So I think it's important for us to tell our stories.
I always say, if you receive a planned gift, celebrate it, you know, celebrate it. And you don't necessarily have to give out names, but you can certainly let your congregation know that you've received the planned gift, you need that planned gift, and you appreciate that planned gift, and you encourage all the rest of the congregation to do much the same thing, you know. I had a gentleman from Conception Bay North call me, and he said, do you do wills? And I said, no, sir, I don't do wills, but I can help you and, you know, get your estate in order. So I went to see him. We brought him into St. John's to see a lawyer, and he had a new will drafted. And in that will, he left bequest for his church. But, you know, so I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an accountant, but I can facilitate people who want to make planned gifts. And if anybody is interested in following up with me, my number is 709-739-5667, or my email address is kevinsmith709@gmail.com.
Yeah, or you can contact St. Mark's and we would put people in contact with you as well. You know, I think when the last thing you were just saying there, you know, the importance too of saying thank you.
Oh,
right? One of the knocks on the church, and sometimes it's well deserved, is that, all the church minds is money. Because oftentimes that's all we do mind is money, right? And we're asked for people to give us money so that we can survive, rather than switching our focus to like encouraging people to partner, join in, share in the good work that the church is doing, so that people can be excited about it. And then when they do it, to say thank you, right? Right. And to not just assume that it's people's obligation to give us the money, right? To pay your dues, which is another term that I just, drives me around the bend. But if, to frame things in a positive way, right? But, also realizing that, we need to start having grown-up conversations about money, right? And to learn from the mistakes of the past, where the church has not been, we have berated people, right, to give us money and made it sound like a onerous responsibility and a duty. But to change the focus, to make it more positive, to invite people to be a part of something good that's happening in their communities. And I think, that in itself can really contribute to people's sense of not only to just want to give regularly, through your envelope or through electronic giving, but to leave some kind of legacy, for afterwards as well.
Well, I think most parishioners at St. Mark's would agree that St. Mark's is a marvelous parish and they're doing some wonderful things. And that's why they're worthy of support.
Yeah, I'm biased. I would say yes. I agree with you. But if there's anybody who's watching this right now or is going to be tuning in later on, and if you want to have a conversation with me about some of this stuff, please feel free to reach out to me. And I would ask everybody to prayerfully consider, what kind of, financial gift you can give to the church. Whether it's through, the regular means, the electronic means, or, to leave some kind of legacy for the continued important and creative work that St. Mark's has been doing now since 43 years. 43 years, St. Mark's has been engaged in meaningful ministry in this part of the city. So we're in the kind of the northeastern part of St. John's, but our reach goes even beyond that. So we have a long legacy of doing really great ministry, within to each other, but also to the community around us. And so, I would ask people to consider what they could give, and also to say thank you to all the wonderful people who make all that good ministry happen, right? Sometimes I'm the person that's out front and gets a lot of the attention for it, but it's not just me, right? It's a whole team of people, dedicated people who, love God and, committed followers of Jesus and really just want to help people and make the world a better place. And that's what makes St. Mark's so great, is that, right?
I would agree wholeheartedly.
Yep. So Kevin, thank you so much. It's been great. We could talk for like another hour or something. Not the first conversation you and I have had about these matters. Kevin is a great help to me and a great, wealth of information and knowledge and, good ideas and support. So I appreciate what he does, not just at St. Mark's, but throughout the whole diocese. So thank you so much, Kevin.
No problem.
And thanks everyone for joining in. Don't forget that our Sunday worship will be here on Facebook Live this Sunday at 10 a.m. It's the Feast of Pentecost. We're going to be doing things a little bit different, a little more laid back. The sermon is going to be some questions, some that have been sent in, but also maybe one or two that I'll take from live. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your question, please send it in. Maybe you want to ask a follow-up question about, giving. Anything goes. So send them along. So looking forward to seeing you all on Sunday. Enjoy this beautiful day. Make the most of it. Go for a walk. Sit on your deck. Whatever way that you can get that sunshine, that vitamin D into you, you do it. Take care. Have a great weekend. God bless everyone.
Take care, Rob.